Good evening. Okay. Good evening and welcome to Municipal Council on Tuesday, May the 12th. It's 6 o'clock and we will begin our evening meeting. Councillor Brooks is joining us by Teams and we have regrets from Councillor DeLong. We'll begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are privileged to share the land with them. Are there any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions? Councillor Hubley.
I would just like to let you know that I'll be leaving in about 30 minutes to attend a ratepayers meeting in Hempford, and I will return on Teams or in person, depending on time.
Any other announcements? Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks. I'd just like to acknowledge the organizers and the participants of the Bridgewater Flores Walk that some of us participated in on the weekend. We had a great presentation from Crystal Trull, who organized it, and I'd like to acknowledge her work especially. Flores Walk is centered around raising awareness around perinatal mental health. And the Bridgewater event raised almost $1,800, which most of which will stay in the community and go to help people access doula support who may have some financial barriers to accessing that type of support.
We should acknowledge that you gave a very personal and touching story about your own experience in with adjusting to motherhood and the challenges of that. So thank you for your presentation. Any other acknowledgements? Councillor Burns.
It was just an announcement. I also have a ratepayers meeting tonight, so depending on where we are in the schedule, I may, and when they actually start the ratepayers meeting, because they roll it into another meeting, I may try to attend and come back.
Okay. Any other acknowledgements? Maybe a small table. We'll move on then. This is the time where we usually have public input. I don't see anyone in the gallery tonight, but we encourage those who may be listening or watching to participate by attending a meeting. It's an opportunity for residents to provide feedback to council on any issue that is of concern to them or to ask questions, and we provide an opportunity to either provide feedback immediately to the question or through subsequent follow-up. There are no changes to the agenda that I know of at this point, so I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Burns. All in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We have minutes from council meeting of April 28th. Are there any changes or omissions that need to be noted? Not hearing any, I'll approve those minutes as circulated. And the special council meeting of April 28th. Are there any corrections to be made to those minutes? Not seeing anyone make any note of those, so they'll be approved as circulated. There is no business arising from the minutes, and we will move then to the awarding of tenders. And the first one is a tender for extension of contract grub control, liming and fertilizing at the Mark Ball Fields. And our CAO will lead the presentation on this.
Thank you, Mayor. The item before council this evening is RFP 2024-01-400. It's for the extension of the contract for grub control, liming, and fertilizing. The recommendation is that council authorize staff to extend the award of RFP 2024-01-400, grub control, liming, and fertilizing Mark Ball Fields to Nature's Reflections Landscaping Limited for the amount of $54,541, excluding HST, for an additional 2 years of maintenance services as per the RFP that was awarded. Some members of council may recall the presence of grubs at the Mark Ball Field resulted in the closure of one field in 2023 and partial closure of the remaining two. They were reopened in 2024, and the services were provided to address the grub control. Staff are very pleased with the results from Nature's Reflection and the recommendation is for the extension of a 2-year term, which was provided in the RFP, at a total cost of $54,541, excluding HST.
Someone put the motion on the floor. Councillor Hubley.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move Municipal Council approve the extension of RFP 2024-01-400 grub control, liming, and fertilizing at the Mark Ball Fields for an additional 2 years of maintenance to Nature's Reflection Landscaping Limited for the amount of $54,541, excluding HST. And I so move.
Seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Moore. Any questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We'll move then to the second tender, which is the award of the remote locker and purchase for the community hub. Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The first one is a memo for the hold locker at the community hub, which will be used by the Social Public Library. As noted on March 24th, 2026, Council announced a partnership with the Social Public Library. Part of that partnership was the request from the Social Public Library to have what's called a hold locker in the facility. A hold locker is basically a unit where you can go on and request a book that then goes into the hold locker. You get an email with a code, and you can go pick your book up at the library. And staff don't need to give you the book out. You just punch your code in and open up the locker, much like you would do at Canadian Tire. Has a similar type of one. If you want to order some stuff there, you get a code and you pick your item up from there. The Social Public Library requested a 24-unit locker system. I did follow up with the manufacturer. I won't even bother trying to say the name, but let's just call it Remote Locker Plus. And I asked if there was a smaller unit, just because I'm trying to look at the overall budget. They did indicate there was a smaller unit, that you could go with the 24-unit one. I asked if we wanted to upgrade, what would that mean? They simply indicated they add another unit to it and added at that point in time. The cost difference is outlined in here. It's about $14,000 in the difference. We did have another meeting with the Social Public Library. They do believe that the bigger unit is the way to go, but as you'll see in the memo, I have 3 options. One is to not put a book hold locker in. One is to go with the smaller unit. Another is you could in fact go with the unit that was requested, which was 24 unit. The price for the 14 unit is $52,159.40. Before HST, the price in the 24 unit is $66,217.40. We do have budget to do either unit, although my budget is getting thinner as we go with more additions to the project, but we still do have budget. If council decides to go one way or the other, we can do that. And there's plenty of space allocated in the vestibule for either size, either the smaller unit or the larger unit. If you go with the larger unit all now, or if you decide to add to that unit later on, there is allocated space to do that. I'm happy to open for any questions. I'm not an expert on hold lockers, but I'll do my best.
Councillor Smith.
Can you just tell me a little bit about why, or tell us through the chair to Mr. Waters, what was the argument for the larger locker size? And also, if you could tell me why the locker is needed? Because as I understand it, there's going to be staff there managing the space. So why a locker as opposed to like an in-person hold system where you have a shelf and you check out things
I think it's
at
a,
a desk?
I think it's a combination of two. Recognizing that the space in the community hub is not intended to be a library. So there are no books per se in that particular space. It's meant to be a program space for the library, so it's an addition of their existing space. However, there is a reading zone in that space, and there are a significant amount of residents in this area. So the library wanted to give the ability for folks that wanted to get books to order books online, much like they do now, in particular in all of the other locations, and have people, rather than go to the Social Public Library at the Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center, that are here and surrounding areas, could stop in and pick the books up here and in fact, read the books in the reading zone of the library. That was the rationale behind it. Your first question was the number, the 24. I had the same question. It was one of the reasons why, when I looked at it and spoke to the manufacturer, because it's a little bit new to me too, a hold locker, having a brand new facility, and we don't have a clear understanding of how many people, what the demand is. That's why I asked the manufacturer, is there a smaller starter type of unit? And that's when they indicated, yes, the 14-1 was their base unit, is where they started one. And then I kind of probed on, okay, well, is there a significant difference if we add a 10-unit thing at the start, or if we add a 10-unit thing 12 months from now, and we see demonstrated need? And the indication I got was, no, there was really no different. You just add the unit, and it's basically a plug-and-play type of thing. That's one of the reasons why I've recommended the smaller unit rather than the larger one, because we don't know the traffic. The discussion by the Social Public Library was they have, I can't remember what it was, 80 people in back orders now waiting for books for their current system that they have. So they see tremendous need. Us, certainly me, being new to library and hold lockers, I don't have any understanding of the need. I can only go by what is requested. So they're indicating the need is there. I guess council can decide if they feel the need is adequate or not. But they do feel fairly strongly they need a hold locker.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. It seems from this explanation that the locker is only available from inside the building. You can't go there unless the library is open. There's no exterior.
I can comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the beauties of this type of system is it's available 7/24, and we've built a vestibule into the system that allows access. To allow for access and security, we're putting in a swipe system on the door, and the way it can be programmed is the code that you get for your locker door in your book will be the same code you get to open the main door to the vestibule. So basically you put in, 1111, the main door opens up, you go in, you put 1111 in your book locker at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, you get your book and you go, but you can't get into library space because there's another door there that won't have the same code on it. So that one of the beauties of the hold locker is 7/24 access.
So based on the second explanation, I can justify, for me, the extra costs, because I think that it allows a larger number of people to participate in library services. If you were to tell me they had to go during library times, I would have told you, stay with the 14 unit. But I see this as extending a new service to this area that a larger number of people could participate in. Thank you.
Other, Counselor Burns?
Assuming that there's not a huge, is there a huge cost difference between adding in the extra units at the beginning? Because I would assume it's cheaper to just do it all now to some extent, and assuming that it's cheaper, that it's right now, my thought is just spend the money, because to put in the bigger unit, we're investing an incredible amount of time, energy, and money into this to build a facility with services that people want to use. And we're doing it at an access hub where a lot of people from the municipality would otherwise naturally travel by, and they're not going into the library that would otherwise be at the LCLC. So having an access point for an extra 10K that we're looking at here, this is not a big deal. There's going to be 10K and overruns on something else that we're not even, that's just going to, I hope not, but I'm realistic with construction. So I think for the sake of 10 grand in a capital construction to make a more usable library service, then I would say, like, let's do this.
Yeah, to answer your question, there's really not, per se. The only savings that would be there would be shipping. It would be it's hundreds of dollars, not thousands, but the unit this is a specialized piece of equipment. I didn't mention in my earlier spiel, we are using special procurement for this because it's a specialized piece of equipment that marries with the library system in the province. So there's no core savings in the actual equipment. It's the same cost today as it would be a year from now, unless, of course, inflation. So I can't speak to inflation. But there likely would be a shipping cost. But I understand your point.
Counselor Reinhardt, and then we'll put the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like me to put the motion first, or?
No, you just,
Okay.
as long as, if you had a question for information, that's fine,
Okay.
and then we'll,
Yeah, I was wondering, well, first, thank you for the added explanation, because I know I saw it as a pretty high-ticket item, so with the added explanation, it's helped add my support to it. I was just wondering about if there's any warranty and what happens if there are any issues of repair, like where does that service come from?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I don't have that answer. There would be a warranty, but honestly, I don't recall what it is. I can get that information, but I apologize, I don't have it.
yeah, and I guess the question on the service, too.
Yeah, it's the same, it comes from Quebec. They're all serviced by the same entity. It's part of the library system, so it's the same organization that would have to serve it. Typically, a lot of these things are serviced online. They would, much like IT folks, they would tunnel in and do repairs. If it's a physical thing, that's a different story, but a lot of these are ones where somebody in Quebec would tunnel through the internet and fix them, much like our IT folks do.
Any other questions? We're going to put the motion on the floor, and I think generally I'm hearing support for the higher investment to get more access to lockers. So that would be adding in the $66,217.40. If someone would like to make that motion. Oh, Councillor Smith, thank you.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council approve the use of alternative procurement as per section 19 of policy 033, purchasing and tendering, to purchase a remote locker from Biblioteca for the South Shore Public Library program space in the amount of $66,217.40. excluding HST.
And a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Reinhardt. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on then to the award of furniture and replacement millwork contract for the community hub.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. So yeah, this is the furniture for the entire space that we have at the Community and Business Hub, as well as we discussed millwork when we brought the fit-up quote to council, that we were looking for alternative fit-ups for cost savings. So I have both of those as the same spiel. So over the last 4 months, staff has looked at the furniture based on request from the Social Public Library, as well as the designer. We went through a myriad of options. I know there was some discussion in a previous thing. It'd be good to have a chart that outlined prices from other vendors. It wasn't as simple as that because a lot of vendors had different options, different products. It wasn't an apple-to-apple comparison, so we had to look at a number of things. We did look at the quality of the furniture to ensure that it was something that was last more than a short period of time. We wanted to look at look and feel and how it married with the particular space. We also wanted to look at the request of the Social Public Library and what they wanted for the space, the designer, and then cost. We did have 5 vendors that we searched out, all vendors under the Provincial Standing Offer or Kinetic GPO program, which from a cost perspective, the reason we use those is to ensure we're getting the best price for the particular products. So that was a little bit easier knowing that those vendors have already been vetted. I will say that one of the advantages of looking at multiple vendors, even though there's provincial or Kinetic GPO pricing, we were able to get them to reduce pricing beyond that for some savings for the municipality. So you'll notice there are 3 listings. One is the Kinetic. They're a company out of HRN. They're the ones that are doing the lion's share of the products. I won't go through it unless, of course, council wants me to, but they are doing the lion's share of the products, and they're also doing the alternative millwork. We had about 5 different sections of millwork. They're doing 3 of the alternative spots. The maker space, they're not doing because they don't do custom millwork. They do furniture style millwork, and the maker space needed custom millwork as far as the size of the butcher blocks and such. And they're not doing the welcome desk. Again, that was more custom related than off the shelf. They are doing the millwork for the boardroom, the millwork for the staff lounge upstairs, and the millwork for the reading zone and the gamer zone, which did equate to a savings from the original quote that we had from RCS on the fit-up, from the $925 down to about $885, I believe it was, about $28,000 in savings. The other 2 providers are Office Interiors, which is more related to desks and cadenzas and bookshelves for us. And then the last one was Wintergreen, which was more the specialty type of equipment, furniture that was requested in the gamer zone and in the kids zone. We are using, again, provincial standing offer and Kinetic GPO pricing. We're using provincial standing offer for the collective and for Office Interiors, and we're using Kinetic GPO for Wintergreen. And with that, I'll open for any questions.
Councillor Oikle.
I have 2. One is we're having 2 quiet quiet
Quiet
pause, right? But yet we're only having 3 chairs.
Yes. When's an accessible quiet pod?
Well, wouldn't a person also need, if they had someone else in there with them, need a
There
chair?
is. They would have their own wheelchair, and then there's another chair.
Oh, and then there would be another one, okay.
Right.
And then my second one is, could you explain why we're saying, where is it? Replacement millwork instead of millwork?
What I mean by that is replacing from the RCS fit-up quote. So we're taking parts of the RCS fit-up quote, and we're gonna remove those, because they already quoted for the millwork. So they quoted for the staff lounge, it's like $21,000. We're taking that off, so we're replacing that with the collective, who quoted about 10,000. So that's what I meant by replacement.
Questions? So no one else, I will ask the question. So there was input from the library, but in the end, do they have, I guess, in doing this, is there kind of a collective look that's going to be comparable in all the areas? And they've put in requests, but have they kind of approved of the, I guess, the aesthetics of how it will look and feel?
Yeah, yes and yes. The designer themselves is very connected with that side of the equation. So the designer has looked at all of the furniture, has actually come back to me with, you can't go with this, you need to go with that because it won't match for look and feel. So the designer has been very beneficial on that. And I have reviewed with the library all of the options we're considering before coming to council to ensure that they were happy with the options that were proposed. So combination of the two.
Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Oikle.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council award the contracts for the Community Business Hub furniture and replacement millwork to the collective in the amount of $136,397.77. Office interiors in the amount of $28,068.91. And wintergreen in the amount of $15,446.19, with a total cost of $179,912.87, excluding HST, and I so move.
And a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Vino. Is there further discussion on the motion? I guess just one quick question would be, all the delivery can be made and the timing of that is all good?
If I say this loosely, God, I hope so. The main item that I was most concerned with was the hold locker and in this particular one, the quiet pods. And I'm told 90 days, so we do have time. Furniture was much quicker turnaround.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion as presented signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We do not have any presentations and no considerations of correspondence. We'll move to recommendations from committees and boards and the Municipal Joint Services Board, office relocation. Tom, are you doing that? Thank you.
So this matter is back before council for supplemental budget approval. So the MJSB board has authorized MJSB staff to start the process of relocating into the Welltide building. And so the CEO or the COO of the MJSB is working on that. But the relocation does result in unbudgeted expenses. And so this report is an outline of the supplemental budget request. So you can see in Table 1, the current rent at Aberdeen is $43,638, and that's included in the current budget. The planned rent at the Welltide building annually would be $78,960, which is a difference of $35,322 annually, but the relocation will only be for 6 months of the current fiscal. So the proportional shares of the $17,661, which is representing 6 months' rent. MODL's portion would be $6,305, Town of Bridgewater $5,497, and Town of Mahone Bay $1,570, and the MJSB itself would be responsible for $4,289. So the motion that is before council is not there. Oh, sorry, there it is. We're recommending municipal council approves the supplemental budget allocation for the MJSB office relocation to the Well-Tide location in the amount of $17,661 for the increased rent for 26-27 excluding HST, and further that the municipality of Lunenburg's share would be $6,305.
Do we need any further background information before we have the motion put on the floor? I think this was reported at a previous meeting that this recommendation was adopted by the MJSB for a variety of reasons, needing more space, the inadequacy of the current space they're in. I think we're all presented to council. Would someone put the motion on the floor? Deputy Mayor Vino.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council approves the supplement budget allocation for the MGSB Municipal Joint Services Board Office relocation to the Well-Tide location in the amount of $17,661 for the increased rent for 2026-2027, excluding HST, and further, that the municipality of the District of Lunenburg share be $6,305, and I so move.
And a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Burns. Further discussion on the motion? Or any discussion on the motion, I should say. All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We will move then to Planning Advisory Committee and the revisions to the final draft of the Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw. Planning team is in charge here. I'm not sure who's taking the lead, but
Sure, yeah, I can start us off here. So good evening, everyone. What I can do is, we don't have a formal presentation for council, but just to give a bit of a recap of the Planning Advisory Committee discussion, and then where we are today and where we're aiming to be next month. So as you recall, a couple of weeks ago, our staff presented kind of a mini what we heard presentation, which detailed some of the information we heard from the public, from council, from members of PEC, and from staff about some of those changes that that people would like to see from draft 2. So many of you were involved in the engagement process of draft 2, and so as you would know, the discussions as part of that were much more focused on some of the finer details. There weren't any major pieces that we heard people wanting change from that version. A lot of people were saying, I think you listened to us after draft 1 and you made the changes, and maybe there's a few tweaks here and there. So what we did after the what we heard discussion was we prepared a fairly detailed report outlining a summary of all those changes, and we categorized them into whether it was related to zoning, whether it was related to condo structure, or maybe there's a bunch of formatting and spelling and grammar and things like that. So that was brought forward as a report with the staff recommendation to Planning Advisory Committee last week. The Planning Advisory Committee had an opportunity to hear a presentation that kind of summarized the bigger items, I guess you could say, that were being raised in that. And then the result of that was that the Planning Advisory Committee passed a motion to recommend all of the changes that were recommended in the staff report. And then they also made 2 amendments to that as well. So one of the amendments was around the number of lots that could be subdivided per year, up to a maximum of 6 in the agricultural potential zone. So the draft suggested 2 lots per year over 3 years. The committee suggested, let's just not worry about how many lots per year. If somebody wants to do 6 in 1 year, that's fine. Maybe they want to do 1 per year, but let's not get into limiting them per year, but still keep the maximum at 6. And the other amendment was around cluster development taking place within the agricultural potential zone. So that was identified as one of those areas that needed an additional piece where we'd, in the second draft, looked at putting in place some limits on subdivision in the agricultural potential zone. But we needed a comparable kind of restriction that looked at cluster development. So cluster development, lots of discussion about that over the past few years, but it's through a development agreement process. But the second draft didn't include any kind of limit to the size of what that could be. And so to put that on a more level playing ground, our staff recommendation included a unit limit of, I think, 12 or 16 units in that. I think it was maybe 12. But what the committee ended up recommending was that it actually does not allow cluster development at all to occur in that zone. And so that was the second amendment, was to just remove that as a permitted use from the agricultural potential zone. So those were the 2 amendments. Otherwise, the committee basically agreed with the staff recommended changes. So what we have kind of in our work plan is a detailed list of all of the changes that we will go after tonight and start creating that final draft for council. And so over the next few weeks, our staff will put that together, finalize those maps, and then get that ready for or what we would hope would be a first reading that council could do, presumably on June 9th, which would be the first council meeting in June. And so that would be, as of first reading, the new regulations would be in effect. The next step after that would be a formal public hearing and second reading. And so the target for that would be July. And then at that point, should those things move forward as well, then things would go off to the province. The minister and their staff there would review it and then approve it at some point after that. So they have 60 days to approve those documents. But that would put a council kind of in line to get that dealt with in July, avoiding the month of August, and then also getting those things in place for first reading, because we basically have to be ready to implement as of first reading. But yeah, we're basically ready to go with that list of changes. And so we're happy to answer specific questions or anything about that as well.
Okay. It's been a long road, but lots of learning along the way. And I do want to recognize the planning staff for the effort they have made to reach these deadlines, because I did sit in a meeting with some of you last year and you wanted to have to December, and we all agreed we needed to do it sooner. And I know that it's at least 6 months earlier than what you really wanted. So I do want to recognize you for the effort made in doing this, because we as council, we have other work and you have other work to do as well. So kudos to you for really stepping up and getting this done. So any questions? Deputy Mayor Vino.
Would this be the time to speak to additional requests for changes in the MPS before a motion is put on the floor?
Yes.
Okay, just let me grab my document here. Okay. So I wanted to speak about the timeline with regards to RV permits and the need for development permits. So I'm going to look at staff for a second to clarify that timeline that's in the MPS right now is what length?
90 days.
90 days, okay. So I would like to suggest 2 things with this section. And the first one being to extend the timeline requiring a permit from 3 months to 6 months. Many residents use RVs seasonally during construction periods. if they're building a new home and they want to be on site, or for short-term recreational purposes. A 6-month threshold would better distinguish between temporary seasonal use and longer-term use while reducing administrative burden on both residents and staff. The second item that I wanted to speak about was the fee for a development permit. Currently, it's $26 to obtain that permit, and part of the process in the MPS would be to obtain that if you're living in an RV beyond whatever time we decide for today. The information that we would get from that development permit would be things such as setbacks from property lines. RVs must meet the same side back as dwellings, and that is 2 meters from the side yard, 6 meters from the front yard, and 20 meters from water course. This helps protect neighbors from having an RV encroach right directly. So I see the point of the setbacks, but beyond setback information, there's very little additional information required from RV owners. When I spoke with planning staff about this, they said development permits without accompanying a building permit are very uncommon. So my suggestion here today is to remove that $26 fee. And to do this, although the fee is relatively small, it may still discourage some residents from obtaining permits altogether, whether that would be financially or just not wanting to give the municipality more money. Eliminating the fee could encourage greater compliance, improve communication with property owners, and most importantly, provide the municipality with better awareness of those living in long-term RV occupancy. So those are the two suggestions I'd like to put forward. Just to recap, removing the $26 development fee just for RV situations and extending the timeline from 3 months to 6 months, which also aligns better with the May to October timeline of campgrounds. Thank you.
If we could just deal with the recommendation or the request on the timeline for the approval. As I understood at the PAC meeting, it was noted to look at an extension of that.
Correct. So at the PAC meeting, we presented 150 or 180 days, 180 days being 6 months.
So that change is one of the changes that would be made in the revisions, in the revised document. So that's already taken care of, Deputy Mayor.
I wrote this before that meeting, so
Okay.
I didn't know
Okay.
how that was going to go,
Okay.
but that is the first one.
Yeah, so that
And
one
then-
is dealt with. On the second issue, I would like planning staff to comment on that.
I guess it may be easier to just not specify the requirement for a development permit at all. And Jeff may have more to add on that, but I think removing fees gets a little bit more complicated when you start to specify different types of uses and excluding certain types of uses in the fees. But Jeff, you might have more to add.
Yeah, so I'd recommend if you want to exempt RVs from a development permit fee, I'd suggest that you do that in your fees policy and not don't mention it in your land use bylaw. Because if you ever want to change that, it's quite a process to go through to amend a bylaw, but your fee policy, you can amend that with 7 days' notice to council.
Okay, on that, because I think that's a good suggestion. We don't want to go back and have to open up a whole lot around this unless we're going to be 10 years down the road or whatever the requirement is to make changes. But on the fee issue, we can deal with that separately. But what are the implications, I guess, in doing that, in creating an exemption here?
Yeah, I don't have a number in front of me of how many development permits that we currently have for RVs. Once minimum planning is in place, and so once we do first reading, everything's going to need a development permit. So we're going from about 12% of the municipality to 100%. So, but today, like right now, I don't have the number of RVs to tell you like a price-wise. I can look up like the total budget. We typically are around about 25 development permits right now. That covers 12% of the municipality. So times that by 26. That's, it's a fairly small number. And so then only a portion is going to be RVs related to that.
Yeah, just further to that, and a reminder that anything that's there today, we're not going to go and ask people for permits. It's really about new changes. So yeah, I would expect there would be very few people in that situation making that application. In some cases, knowing that there needs to be an application after that time period. So I wouldn't think that there would be a substantial number of that type of permit coming in.
In draft 2, just to note that in addition to confirming that the residential setbacks are met or the setbacks of that zone, it also says that the development permit would help to check that a maximum of 3 recreational vehicles are on the site.
So that avoids an issue with, which we've heard, is congregate numbers in locations.
So beyond 3 recreational vehicles on a site, it would fall under the category of campground and RV park.
Councillor Moore.
So I'm glad to see we're changing it to 180 days, because a lot of people do go camping from the May weekend till the Thanksgiving weekend. So you say everybody that has one now is grandfathered?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm living in an RV from May till October, and then I go someplace else, and it's unoccupied all winter until May again. Since it's already there, you do not have to have, yeah.
Yeah, to clarify, yeah, so you wouldn't need to apply for a development permit in
Right.
that case. That's correct, yeah.
This
So there's
relates-
no
yeah,
checking.
It relates to if you purchased or got an RV and placed it on a location, then you would,
Okay.
be eligible, then you would be,
Yeah.
it's
But
a new,
anything there's
it's a new
now, we're not
location.
gonna,
That's right, and I guess
So-
to qualify kind of what the bigger picture, what we're trying to do is, a lot of municipalities don't allow people to live in RVs full-time. And so they would have kind of rules about, somewhere for a certain period of time, and after that, like, you're out of there. So this was trying to find a way to recognize that people do need, in some situations, to live in an RV
That's right,
full-time.
they do.
And so trying to create some type of parameters around that to say, okay, well, do those RVs need to meet the same
Right.
setbacks as a normal dwelling? Okay, that seems fair.
Yeah.
And, okay, well, what about people who live seasonally? We don't want to capture those people. We're not trying to deal with that. We're trying to deal with full-time residents, and this is the option that they have as a place to live. And so to make sure that we have an idea that where they are and make sure that they're living in an okay location, and that it meets the other requirements of the bylaw. So that's the kind of balance we're trying to strike.
Councillor Moore and then Councillor Smith.
how are we going to police this?
It would be challenging regardless, but it's essentially the same way that we're going to enforce any other element of this bylaw. So it's not a proactive approach. We don't have resources in terms of bylaw enforcement officers. Our development officers have that authority, but they rely on our building inspectors to go out and do things like inspect properties when we get complaints. But partly it's about having the rules in place so that people know how they can follow them, and also that neighbors know what's allowed and what's not allowed. And in some cases, I think we may have situations where, you get a complaint from somebody that says, oh, there's some RVs there. Well, now somebody can look and say, well, actually, that's allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm meeting the requirements that are there. So we have some more clarity for neighbors of property owners and the people that are living there as well. And it's just helpful to have an understanding of what the rules are.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a lot to add to that. My question was kind of answered, but I do want to say that I think that the point that I would like to emphasize is that clarity around what's allowed will be very helpful, because sometimes there's a lot of conflict about just not knowing what's allowed. And if someone can say, no, I have a development permit, this has all been checked out, this is fine, then it will be very helpful.
Councillor Oikel, and then back to Councillor Moore.
Thank you. So mine is around the subdividing of the agricultural potential zone. And my concern is that if someone has hectares and hectares of land and they divide it 6 times, they're still with, each person gets hectares of land. So for eternity, they cannot divide that land again. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess there's some exemptions to that. So as Jeff has just mentioned to me, if it's over 25 acres, there's a certain size that kind of under the provincial subdivision rules, somebody can subdivide very large pieces of property without coming to the municipality for approval anyway. So we have, okay, it's 10 hectares, thank you very much. So there's that situation. In terms of other people who you're thinking, you know, are going to be limited by that 6 lot, you know, residential lots that they can subdivide. That is true, so long as future councils decide to keep that particular rule in place. What you'll see sometimes is, you know, councils may relook at something and say, well, that date was a long time ago. Maybe we'll move that date a bit up and say, well, okay, well, let's giving people some more flexibility there. But that's still a balance. I think you're still running into the overall intent is to try to preserve agricultural lands. And so, yeah, these policies and regulations can always be changed and always need to be looked at through that renewal process and review process every 10 years. Council always has the opportunity to make changes, and the province may make changes at their end too about protection of agricultural land as well.
Thank you.
Back to Councillor Moore.
When I look back to the wildfires in Tantallon, and a lot of, when I drove through there and through the subdivision that my brother lives in, a lot of the houses that were burnt down, eventually, once all the insurance and all that kind of stuff, and people were rebuilding their houses, and they were living in an RV on their property. And we all know it could take more than 180 days to build a house. So are we still going to make these people that's beyond the 180 days in this kind of a scenario, still get the development permit even though they've already applied for this building permit for their house?
We don't have a specific exemption for that. I've seen some bylaws that do allow for that particular situation.
Yeah.
That's certainly an easy thing to add, is an exemption for that.
If I may, I think that would be the proper thing to do, because I mean, they're already had a loss, they're already building a new home, and here we are, you got the building permit, which I'm sure they paid a lot of money for, and then we're going to get them to get another permit because of over 180 days. I would really like to see that in there. Thank you.
Yeah, we can add that.
Yeah, I'm just getting a little nod here, which in an emergency situation, like, and I don't know what provisions HRM made for the rebuilding. I think there were I don't know if there were exemptions made or whatever, but I think in those cases, I'm getting a little bit of a nod here, that there may be an opportunity when you face those situations to bring in some of those, whether we need to build it in now or not. I guess I look to the planning staff to give some advice on that.
It's a simple change. We could make an additional provision that would allow for, I think you would speak to any type of under construction.
Yes, yes. Wouldn't have to be a wildfire. It could be any kind of
That's
fire.
right. Anytime it's under construction, someone can live on the site while it's under construction. Yep.
That makes sense?
Does. Deputy Mayor Vino, your second point around the fee for the development agreement. Are you okay with us dealing with that under a fee change policy as opposed to including it in the conversation here?
Yes, I am, as long as in the MPS LUB, we don't list any fees. It's just reference to a development permit, and then we can catch it on the other side. So when the time is right, I can bring that forward, and whether it goes through or not, that will be my time to share those points, and council can decide at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other issues people want to raise? Oh, Deputy Mayor Vino.
I just wanted to speak to the agricultural piece, and I'll make reference to the meeting in Northfield, where residents came forward and expressed that we had land marked as agricultural, which, according to those that spoke that evening, did not fall under agricultural. So what are we doing with the new draft that somebody could challenge what we say is agricultural versus what's there for agricultural? Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe just for clarification, so the question is, what can people do if they don't think that they fall under an agricultural area,
Yeah.
but it's showing as that in the map?
It's showing on the map.
Okay, yep.
They don't deem it to be that use. They might want to develop it. It might be along a lake, might not be along a lake, but they want to develop that piece, but we have it deemed agricultural land.
I guess anyone could make a request and a comment to have certain properties changed on their zoning. So we did get requests come through from members of the public. All of that's been included in the package that has gone to PAC and then here. Some people generally said, I don't like this. Some people said, I want my property removed. Our recommendation in those cases was to not change it. And the reason for that was we want to be really consistent with an approach to this because it's recognizing that it is putting limitations on certain property owners. And the basis for all of this is federal soils mapping, which is a really kind of basis for a lot of what the province looks at in terms of agricultural areas. Their policies that talk about protection of agricultural land reference these certain soil classes. So you hear people talk about class 1 and class 2. In our case, we're really dealing with class 3 soils. That would be what the province considers as potential for agriculture. And of course, that's recognizing that it doesn't reflect every single property perfectly, like the line for where certain soil starts and stops is never going to be perfectly accurate without having someone on site. But it's fairly good. It just doesn't always, it doesn't reflect necessarily how developed they've made their property. Like, have they tile drained it? Have they cut the trees? Have they removed the rocks? There's a lot of work that some properties would need to have done in order to make it productive agricultural land. However, the soil still may be there. And so our approach is you want to be really consistent with how you apply that because it gets very, very tricky to start to give exceptions and change lines there once you kind of head down that path. So yeah, our recommendation would be as consistent as you can with the application of that, recognizing that it doesn't have a perfect, it doesn't perfectly reflect, agriculture today. But the bigger picture is bigger tracts of land that have the potential to be used sometime in the future for farming would be the overall goal.
I realize it's one piece to a big municipal planning strategy, and when I vote tonight and vote forward, I'm still, based on the feedback I'm hearing, I still struggle with the agricultural piece, but I won't let that affect my vote because there's a lot of really good things in the rest of the document. I just wanted to put on the record, that's where I stand with that one, based on what I'm hearing.
Just to add it to what Reed was saying, there is a policy in the municipal planning strategy right now that will allow for the rezoning of a land as long as the property owner will provide proof from a qualified person that shows that this land does not have class 3 soils. So that there is that option to do that as well. And that way they can apply for a rezoning application. And again, it's up to council to decide whether to approve that application or not.
Okay, Councillor Burns, I think, was next.
Thank you. Most of what's in this draft, very supportive. An incredible amount of work has gone into this as a team, as a council. An incredible amount of work has gone in with the staff, and I think that a large portion of this, we've gotten it where we need to be, and I think we should be really proud of how well we listened to residents on most of the issues here and how we navigated compromises. A lot of people spoke of most of the issues in this land use, in this draft, and said, I didn't think you were going to listen, and you did. Is the summary of what I heard on most of this. So thank you to everyone who did that, because it most really well done. In fact, I was a bit nervous going to the Northfield engagement, and the predominant thing that I heard, especially around water courses, was this is very fair, and we think this is good. And I expected 2 issues at that meeting that I heard from, and I was right. Water course, I was just incorrect on what I was going to hear, but what I was correct on was folks speaking to me about the agricultural potential zone. And I think I heard about it just when you look at the map and you overlay District 7 and surrounding areas in which people would be connected to, it would make a lot of sense as to why I heard from that. And what I'm hearing from folks is that they feel there's a mismatch between what we're doing and what they want to see protected. I know that that arises because people conceptually look at agricultural land and the way it's used today and the way they kind of expect it to be used in the next short to medium term. And what we are doing is based largely upon the framework in which we're expected to protect soils and what they could be used. So I am very realistic about, like, I'm not coming into this and not understanding that. But if I'm here to represent residents, I have to flag that my residents are telling me this is a part where we've missed the mark. And I wish that I could vote separately amongst the rest of the document and this. I truly do, because on the rest of it, there'd be no question as to how I'm going to go, and I'm still struggling with what I'm going to do tonight. My fear is doing something that has enough of a sticker shock, for lack of a better term here, will create a reaction that there will be changes that come forward, not in 10 years, not in 20 years, not in 30 years, but the next time there's an opportunity to change decision makers at the table to affect the changes that people are looking for. And if we're looking for something that has longevity, I don't think that I should be, I don't want to be concerned that this is going to have to be radically changed in 3 years to meet residents' expectations. I do like what the changes about just allowing the 6 subdivisions. I think it makes sense because practically speaking, I don't think it's going to change developers' minds about what they're doing with it, whether it happens over 3 years or all at once. The financing won't make that big a difference. And I do like that we're looking at allowing folks to place their lands into it, that we're exploring that option. I think there is a gap separate to my concern here, and that goes back to people's expectations of uses versus what's going to happen, and that there's a lot of land around the municipality that folks want to protect. I've got some ideas on some other mechanisms outside of this framework that I'd like to bring forward at a future date, but I don't want to go into them too much tonight because I don't want them to muddy the water of what we're talking about tonight, to be quite frank. So for me, based on what I heard from residents, and I have a strong suspicion of how this is going to go tonight, so most councillors can feel good that most of my residents have said everything but the agricultural potential zone is what they can be comfortable with. That's the overarching message I've heard. But I have to listen to folks, and while I don't have the specific, mainly due to my lack of training, and I'm sorry to all the planning folks, I'm sure it's frustrating to hear this from me. I don't have the specific change that would get us where we need to go, but I can't say that we've hit the mark on the agricultural zone in a way that I could say, yes, move this forward, put it in effect on June 9th. So that is something I think we need to spend a little bit more time on, and if everything else was decided tonight, I could vote for everything else but the agricultural potential zone the way it is. And that's not without recognizing that it is inherently a challenge in itself.
I don't think I have an answer specifically, and I recognize that. And I recognize you don't looking for one.
That was as much a a statement to council on how I intend to vote and putting a general question about it out there as if any of you had an answer to that, I'd be surprised. So thanks.
Yeah, no, I just a couple comments that I'll make is that, as you know, you all know more than I do, agriculture was by far the most prevalent issue that we've dealt with over the past couple of years here. And we've heard from hundreds and hundreds of residents about this. And our staff went out and visited specific farms, and we sat down with farmers and other stakeholders involved in agriculture. So this is something that we have more than almost any other issue dug into locally and talked to people about. And truly in that first engagement on draft number 1, there was a really strong contingent of people who wanted to support agriculture, both from allowing people to do what they need to do on their land, but also to protect that land. And so it often came in 2 parts. They wanted to see that land protected, whether they knew that that was through limiting subdivisions or not. That was just their overall goal. And I think when we look at what the province is asking us to do and the advice that we're providing, that's one route you can go. And I think from our perspective, this is the route, limiting subdivisions, that are what we view as an approval by the province. This is a way that they can see that the effort's been made to start to protect agricultural land in this area and meet the provincial statement of interest. That's a really, really important piece there. If that is not there, I do not know that the province would accept this. And I say that because I know the County of Picto's plan was rejected for this particular issue. So I guess what it is a caution to council that if that's something that you don't feel like if it's too much, or if you want to go another route, that's fine. But in terms of if it's too much, my caution would be if you dial that back, it might not be enough for the province. And we want to make sure that you know that information now so that we aren't redoing something and taking further years of work on this if we can kind of foresee that issue now.
That's okay. I will be very quick. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. In fact, I actually very much understand why the subdivision. I think my hesitancy comes from the amount of land that will be covered by this restriction because of the nature of those federal soil mappings and what it covers that is not farmland, but is actually right now probably forestry that will take what I hope would happen, but I suspect it won't be economically feasible in the next short to medium term, which would be to turn those forests into productive agricultural land, and it being class 3 soil, I just don't know if the economics are there. We're not talking about rich, fertile valley soil. It's what it is now and has grown back to versus what it could be. So I very much recognize that, and I think that's part of where the disconnect comes from my residents. The second quick point was just earlier we talked about the provincial regulations that allow without approval for subdivision. It's 10 hectares, so it rounds pretty closely to 25 acres. So the way that works is you don't need municipal subdivision approval for the subdivision, but the lot you're subdividing and all remainder lots need to be 25 acres. So those are very large parcels. So there will be very few parcels that are so large in this municipality, the way that land is chopped up now, that you would have the 6 subdivisions and then room for several other subdivisions of 25 acres, more or less. So the nature of the scheme here by preventing subdivisions is to keep parcels by and large what they are now, with room for limited residential development, which would probably abut public roads already, which I get. And the third thing is, I just have to say this out loud, is when it comes to, I know we're doing this because we don't want to get rejected by the province, but I remember at not this recent, but a previous Northfield one, an elected official following my conversations at the room saying, well, you guys, you don't have to be doing all this. Just do what Pictou did. It's great, it's great, it's great. Well, then the province then rejected the plan that provincial representative was telling my residents that we should have followed in the first place. So I am I'm of the opinion that if the province feels this strongly about it, and they want to put me as the meat shield out between dissatisfaction of what they're requiring and now, if I am going to pursue what my residents are telling me, and the province wants to say do more, then let them stand up and own that. In the fact that I watched it happen in the conversations in the room to then have it be rejected later infuriates me, because I still hear from residents that I should be doing what Pictou did when I know it was rejected. So I very much take the point, and actually from a policy standpoint, everything you're saying is correct. I'm not, this is the different hat, this is the councillor hat, who is the representative of the people. And so if the province wants us to do something that my people are not uncomfortable with, I am personally, well, maybe not the best policy choice, politically willing to let the province tell them that they should do that instead, not me.
Councillor Moore.
So this municipal planning strategy, we said we would look at it in 10 years, did we say? 5 years, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
both are correct. Yeah,
Okay.
there's a 5-year review, and then the 10 year is the full deal. Yeah.
Okay, so can amendments, like any other planning areas, people come in and they want amendments to the planning documents of where they live in a planning area, that can happen anytime, can it?
Correct.
Okay, so does that mean that if we get enough people dissatisfied, okay, back to my original, any amendments, does the province have to accept them?
First of all, council starts with the process, and once the amendment process goes through first and second reading, it has to go to the province for review. If it's a change in a municipal planning strategy, then it requires a minister approval. If it's just the land use bylaw, it's a bit different.
But I think Councillor Moore, I'm not trying to read your head, but I think what
Good
you're
luck with that.
with what you're trying to get at is if you want to rezone your property, you can make that request without changing the bylaw, but without changing the municipal planning strategy. You can come forward with a proposal, correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
To have your property rezoned.
Correct, and that's up to the council to decide if to start the process or not. However, with the agricultural potential zone, there is a policy that clearly states that if you do not provide proof that the land is theoretically not class 3 soil, but let's say class 5 or 7 or in between, then you will, technically the policy does not allow for that rezoning to happen. However, council can also tell staff that at the same time of opening that, they can also amend that policy and then the rezoning may occur. But there is more obstacles or more constraints in relation to that specific zone.
So just trying to foresee maybe where you're looking, there's a very well-recorded decision of the Minister of Agriculture, or Minister of Municipal Relations, Service Nova Scotia as he then was, where a group of 5 farmers in Greenwich attempted to rezone 153 acres of land next to the town of Wolfville. Council passed it 6-5. The minister rejected it and said it cannot be rezoned, and it's still farmland right on the border of Wolfville. So their council has a certain amount of authority, but the minister can act upon the provincial statement of interest for agriculture and say, I don't think so.
Okay.
And then it isn't rezoned. Okay. But as was pointed out, if you can demonstrate that it is not agricultural land, then it's not within the provincial statement of interest. But you need an agrologist typically to give an opinion on the quality or the type of the soils. But the soils here are not the same as the soils in the Annapolis Valley.
No. Okay, thank you.
And just on that, I watch Kings County Council proceedings, and there's hardly ever a meeting that each month that doesn't consider some aspect of rezoning, and it's often related to some agricultural issue, or agricultural land and encroachment, and the agriculture's involved. Now, Kings County's the center of agriculture in Nova Scotia. It's probably not the best example, but it is an example of how often the rezoning and the implications are there. And I think it also points to maybe some of the weaknesses historically in the development of their policy. I don't want to get into that, but I think there's been a lot of evolution in the thinking around planning for agricultural, protection of agricultural land since that plan was brought in. And it has posed some challenges, as it does in all over the country when it comes to protecting farmland. Our discussions, if we went to councils everywhere, would be very comparable. Yes. Councillor Smith.
Sorry, if staff wanted to make a comment.
All I was going to say was that the municipal planning strategy document, which is the policy document, becomes really, really important when you people start to ask for changes in zoning, because that's when we have to look at what the policy says and say, does it meet the intent of what the policy said, and is that something we can recommend? So that, when it starts to be implemented, is when you start to really see how important the policy document is.
I have concerns too around this zone. I think it's a very, very difficult zone, and one of my concerns, which people can see my email in the package, was that when we went from draft 1 to draft 2 and we took the lakeshore zone out, we suddenly removed a whole area around some of the lakes that could have had cottages or more lots on them. And because they were in the lakeshore zone, they would have had to have bigger lots than in other zones, but they still could have created lots on the lake. But now what's happening, because we removed that zone, and it's completely rural agriculture potential zone now, you can't put those lots on the lakeshore. And I am concerned that people don't realize that that was the impact, an impact of going from draft 1 to draft 2 when we removed the lakeshore zone, because it wasn't really in our materials, and I didn't realize it until a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, when I took a real hard look at one particular property, and I was like, wait a minute, and then went back to draft 1 and saw that their property had gone from lakeshore to R2. So yeah, it's hard because I think that people don't necessarily realize they're in this zone, and I have done my best as a counselor to communicate to people and say, you gotta check your zone, use this interactive zoning map, look up your property. Don't take it for granted that you're just in a rural general zone. The class 3 soil is in places that you might not expect. That said, I did communicate as hard as I could, and we all communicated as extensively as we could. We did a lot of public consultation, and I have only heard from one person who does not like that zone for their property. By far, what I've heard otherwise is that zone is much needed, and that we need to stop the fragmentation of lands that have good soil. And I've heard from young farmers who want those properties maintained so that they can someday buy a piece of land with good soil. I've heard from people who have farms who don't want to see those farms that their grandparents farmed chopped up and sold to developers, because development is moving further and further out from Bridgewater. And I hear from people who just want us to be looking forward to food security. So I know that the zone isn't perfect, and we may have to make adjustments later, but I'm okay with voting for it now.
Councillor Burns.
I just wanted to address the Lakeshore residential spot specifically, because I know that the effect here is that it brings all the land, and I can speak about people that I hear from, because while it's not in my district, people are connected to it, is Mush. And I think it's noted in the report, so people should look at it. There is an inherent disconnect between you cannot subdivide your land because you're on Class 3 soils, but you are in a different zone because you're on a lake, and being on a lake makes you special even if you're also on Class 3 soils. And it just so happens that that whole area seems to be with a huge amount of Class 3 soils. So I just don't want anyone listening to think, oh, we got screwed because you didn't protect lakes, because I don't think that's entirely true, and that's unparliamentary language. I shouldn't have said screwed. You didn't get a disadvantaged result because of that. But I think it's important that for folks to know that I think we accidentally resolved a misprioritization in draft 1 with that, and I think it's noted by staff in that already. So I think there'll be different opinions on the validity of that, but I just wanted to throw that out there as well, because I suspect some people will refer back to this later.
Yep, and that's just to add to what you're saying, Councillor Burns, that's correct. The way I would frame it is that in the first draft, it was incorrectly, those zone layers should have been layered differently, and the agricultural layer was kind of trumped by that lakeshore layer, and it should have been the reverse. So I think what you saw in draft 2 was a correction of what should have been applied in the first case, rather than trying to take away something that we wanted to do in draft 1. It was an oversight on our part. So I think in the objective that we want to meet is, again, consistency with the application of that zone, and not treating the ability to create more lots along the lakeshore any different than you'd say more lots along the road. And so that's very much correct. The intention has been corrected in the second draft, and what we do want to do is make sure that places that have not been already chopped up into residential lots have the agricultural potential zone applied to them when it's appropriate.
Questions answered? Any further questions? Was someone prepared to put the motion on the floor? Councillor Bell?
Thank you. To Mayor McLean Weil and members of MODL Council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee and approve the Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw as presented at the May 5th, 2026 Planning Advisory Committee meeting, with the following amendments to the Rural Agricultural Potential Zone, known as RU2. Allow up to 6 lots to be created at one time to a maximum of 6 lots total for any parcel of land, and further forbid cluster developments within the RU2 zone. I so move.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Oikel. Is there further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried with those opposed. Councillor Burns. Motion is carried. So just to refresh us, the final draft will be presented on June 9th, am I correct? And first reading will be that night, followed by a public hearing somewhere between that date and sometime in July. We'll have those dates finalized.
That's correct. So that's our target date, would be the June 9th meeting to bring forward that. And so, I mean, council won't have seen those final changes until that time. So, it will still be up to you at that time to pass first reading. Once you have that full document in front of you and say, this is the final draft and this is what we want. So that would be our objective, is to have that to you for the 9th. And then there are certain notice periods required before those formal public hearings and second reading. But the intent would be the public hearing and second reading could occur on at the same time at some point in July following first reading.
All right, thank you for that. And we will move on then to a staff report from Recreation Parks and Trails, service impacts of discontinuing in-person visitor information services. Ms. Walwyn. This is for information purposes tonight. You've made a few recommendations in the report, and we'll hear what you have to highlight through that.
Okay, good evening, Council. So the report before you provides an overview of the operational and service impacts associated with Council's March 3rd decision to discontinue summer visitor services and the mobile VIC pop-up program, while still retaining tourism funding for future consideration. The report outlines both financial implications and the resulting impacts on tourism-related service delivery. The tourism-related budget lines remain in place. However, not all items will proceed as originally proposed due to the discontinuation of seasonal visitor services. A detailed breakdown of each account is included in my report. With the decision not to hire seasonal visitor services staff for the 2026 season, there are several resulting impacts to visitor service delivery and tourism-related functions. The most immediate impacts are the elimination of the mobile VIC pop-ups and the reduction of in-person visitor engagement opportunities throughout the municipality. There are also impacts to several supporting tourism functions due to reduced staffing capacity. These include fewer proactive updates on our online calendar, longer response times for visitor inquiries through email, social media, phone, and phone, reduced social media activity, so this will be a reduction in posting on both Instagram and Facebook, fewer website updates and tourism blogs, in addition to reduced business outreach during the peak season. Brochure distribution will continue. However, this work will now be completed within existing staff capacity rather than through our seasonal staff. Financially, the change results in approximately $44,000 in previously allocated funding remaining uncommitted. After accounting for anticipated revenues, the estimated net uncommitted amount is approximately $35,900. As outlined in the report, these funds could be provided these funds could be used for future tourism priorities, including the potential development of a tourism strategy or broader regional tourism discussions through the Regional Growth Management Committee.
Questions on the report? Councillor Smith.
I'm wondering if tourism is often managed through RENs, and where are we at with our regional economic study?
That's a difficult question to answer, because to date, the consultants have not been able to find a clear direction forward on a regional approach. And as of earlier this week, there was a discussion, which I'd report on, but I'll do it now, at the mayor's and deputy mayor's meeting about hosting a gathering of the mayors and deputy mayors in middle of June, June 15th, to really spend some time talking about what are the real needs and identifying and trying to find some common threads. The consultants have not been able to find enough common threads of agreement of how to move forward at this point. So that's where it's now at.
Just as a follow-up, will we as council have the opportunity to hear from the consultants about kind of the state of things, what they looked at, and why they're at a bit of a stalemate?
Their recommendation to the mayors and deputy mayors was that they take an opportunity to have a full discussion, not just a individual discussion with each of us, because they did that, spoke with the individual mayors and a number of other people, but we were included in that, and trying to pull together to see if there is a common thread that can be recommended in terms of a strategy to work on regionally. And because it was paid for by all of by a number of municipalities, they would have an opportunity to present back if they can find something to report. Either way, they'll report to us. They have that responsibility, but at this point, there hasn't been something that they could report. I think I'm being fair. I'm looking at Tom. I'm just telling it as it is. So to your earlier question about tourism and RENs, yes, a number of the RENs do have tourism, but the RENs are, I think, under some pressure because there were serious cuts to them, 20%, and some are rumored now to be considering disbanding or having to scale back because of those cuts. And the government seems to have targeted some monies, taken that money and targeted in some way to specific programming, a programming approach. So rather than fund the organization, they'll fund programs. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, so the part of the new provincial approach, the benefit of the REN was to get 50-cent dollars. So for every dollar the municipalities put in, the province would match up to a certain point. The province has completely changed the system, so RENs now have to apply annually for funding for the programs that they want to offer, and the province has identified 3 general baskets of programs to apply for and reduce the amount of funding overall. So there's great competition for dollars that were previously going to support, to a great extent, staffing within the RENs, so that the whole approach has been altered. We as a region have applied for what's called the REP program, so that we may get some funding from the province to enhance the collaboration of our economic development officers as a project, which gets us at the REN table and it gets us recognized by Invest Nova Scotia. So that potentially could be a small win. But the challenge that the consultants have run into is much less interest in a regional platform, more interest on projects that are supported by 1 or 2 units or 2 or 3 units as opposed by a regional approach. So in addition to meeting with the mayors, they're also going to meet with all the CAOs separately and all the economic development staff separately and try to come up with something out of that they will summarize and then present to the group. So it's very unclear. Bridgewater is doing a tourism strategy for Bridgewater. And I think the mayor suggested a regional tourist strategy, but it fell flat. It wasn't taken up by any other units. So it's sort of a big question mark on how we're going to move things forward.
So this leaves us in terms of where tourism, I think I spoke quite extensively about this when we were doing budget considerations, and the need to have a strategy it's hard to measure what your outcomes are if you don't have a strategy in place. And given all that that we have attempted to do as a municipality in the tourism arena, it seems to me that we should have a plan to move forward in a way that really addresses, and I think Councillor Brooks spoke to this as well, that looks at how we measure the impact on our economy and how are we targeting that in a way through a strategy. And I still feel strongly that we need to have that in place as a starting block to really exploring what we know that our big resource that we have is our beauty, and captured in the parks and recreation facilities and recreation areas we have, which have broad appeal. But what's our strategy around how we sell that to people that will come here and spend money and really contribute to the economic vibrancy of our community? And I don't think we've thought that through in a way that is strategic and has a long-term plan to it. So I'm speaking again in support of the need for strategy, and I think I did that before, but I'll reiterate it tonight. Are there other comments anyone wants to make? Are we looking for direction? No? No. Okay. All right, thank you for that. We'll move on the agenda. We have down to mayors and deputy mayor, councillor matters, MJSB. Do we have Councillor Oikel? Thank you.
We do have a short report for Wednesday, April the 22nd. The board approved a customer account policy with an effective date of May the 1st, 2026, and repealed the existing credit sale policy and revenue collection policy. This is based on South Shore Waste Solutions, which had two policies currently to set up and administer customer accounts at the waste site. The credit sales policy and the revenue collection policy both came into effect in May the 23rd, 2014, and have not been reviewed and updated since. With the implementation of the new scale software, MJSB will be able to enforce credit limits on accounts and improve the tracking of the status of accounts with these new policies. The board accepted the 2025 annual hydrological assessment report for information purposes. The board approved the award of dredging and dewatering septic lagoons to Bishop Water Incorporated. The work will be carried out in late summer, early fall. In December of 2025, IT Shared Services completed a comprehensive cybersecurity maturity assessment and security audit. This assessment updated and extended the previous 2020 security audit and was conducted to provide an update review of the IT environment, identify gaps between policies and practices, assess legislative readiness for the modernized Freedom of Information and Protection of Policy Act Bill 150, and recommend strategic actions for policy and practices. ITSS has strengthened its day-to-day cybersecurity practices, and the 2025 assessment confirms that the current focus is appropriately shifting towards formalizing governance, policies, and consistency across partner municipalities. An amount of $30,000 for cybersecurity consulting services has been included in the 26-27 budget. These funds are being used to support specialized expertise in areas such as incident response testing and privacy breach readiness. MJSB will continue to work with its cybersecurity consultant to lead and support these activities as part of the overall implementation of the cybersecurity program. And this is my report.
Any questions for Councillor Oikel? Okay, we'll move to Deputy Mayor Vino.
Thank you. On behalf of Modal's Wellness Committee, they once again this year led a food drive, and I was happy to be the person to deliver our check and funds raised to the Lunenburg Food Bank a week or so ago. They were very gracious, and the mayor and I delivered the check to Mahone Bay via their mayor just a few days ago, and they were gracious for that as well. This past weekend, I attended the annual Lunenburg and District Fire Department's banquet, which is made up of 100 members and guests. This is a night to recognize firefighters and specifically 6 members who in total alone have over 142 years of service. And I would like to mention Donnie Heckman, who is a resident of mine, received the largest band for 45 years. And I gave him that final push to make it to 50. And he said, we'll see. So we'll see if we see him again in another 5 years. But I gave greetings on behalf of the municipality, and I changed it up a bit this year. I usually end up being the last speaker, and most of what I say has already been said. So I decided to use some of my own experiences, and what I remember most is the faces of those who respond. You never forget that first face you see when you're in a tragic event, and I believe it was a well-received speech that I brought forward. Those were the 2 big ones. Other than that, the mayor's, deputy mayor's meeting this past Monday, and check signings and agenda briefings. Thank you.
Okay, some of what I'm going to report I already did, and I'll try to be quick, not skipping over it, but some of it I'll skip through because we have some other items and it's getting almost to 8 o'clock. A number of members here from our council attended the spring meeting of Federation of Nova Scotia Municipalities in Yarmouth. It was encouraging to see such a strong turnout from municipalities across the province. It was the largest spring gathering since before COVID. And the meetings are valuable opportunities to learn from one another and other municipalities and discuss the challenges which are common to many of us across the province. This year's program included discussions on drought preparedness, energy development, fire service legislation, and the growing role of artificial intelligence in municipal government. And I've mentioned that we did meet this week, the mayors, deputy mayors, and CAOs from across Lunenburg County, primarily to discuss regional economic development, but we also had a discussion around the anti-racism and anti-discrimination activities within our municipalities, and there was quite a lengthy discussion about drought preparedness, and our municipal response planning were key in that discussion. I also participated in a meeting led by consultants researching recommendations for a provincial drought strategy. This work follows ongoing municipal advocacy and recognizes the increasing likelihood of recurring drought conditions in Nova Scotia. And it does also reflect the interdepartmental government committee provincial government committee that was established to look at the province and what needs to be done in terms of preparedness and coordination and long-term planning as climate-related challenges become more common. I do think we are going to hear something about this in fairly short order. The consultants were very anxious to meet quickly, and there was quite a large number of them in the meeting. So we'll see. I attended a meeting of the Medway Community Forest Co-op and heard from Chris Gugu the work at Asalukan. I can never pronounce it properly. I need coaching, please. Formerly the Windhorse Farm property. The site is currently closed for renovations, and it is expected to open next month as a place where people connect with the land and learn Indigenous approaches to living in harmony and respect with the natural environment. And it will be open to the general public as well as to representatives from the Indigenous community. Over the last couple of weeks, it seems I've met with a number of residents who thought it would be best to chat with the mayor about a variety of issues, everything from subdivision roads and accessibility requirements, garbage collection and its impact on tourism, road safety concerns, and questions related to volunteer fire department membership. These are really important conversations, and I don't take them lightly. If someone calls and wants to meet, I'm quite prepared to do that because it keeps you very grounded and connected with the concerns and experiences of residents across the municipality. And lots of fundraising going on in the community, and I know many of you have been involved in that. One of the highlights, I'd have to say, in the last 2 weeks was meeting with 3 remarkable junior high students who are representing our area at the National Science Fair in Edmonton. It happens they're all from the town of Bridgewater, but we gave them municipal pins and heard their stories. Dylan DeVried, Lucy Bishop, and Iffy Nuwat will be representing our region at the Science Fair. Their projects explored topics including the impact of snow accumulation on solar panels, the presence of microplastics in public water supplies, and the effects of radio waves on student attention and retention. Their enthusiasm, intelligence, and curiosity were truly impressive, and I felt very inadequate in terms of my science knowledge, but managed to ask a few questions that got the conversation going, and they were quite willing to share. And I think Councillor Reinhardt has outlined Councillor Burns and his lovely little family of young ones, Councillor Smith and Councillor Hubley and I, along with Councillor Reinhardt, participated in Flora's Walk. And I think she spoke of it earlier. So that outlines some of the things over the last couple of weeks. We will now move to the in-camera. Oh, sorry. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, sorry, if I could just add one thing about the NSFM conference. One thing that was brought up was from one of the advocacy committees was the need for more referrals to committees, and it kind of he laid out the process for referring issues to the advocacy committees at NSFM. So I haven't brought forward that process today, but maybe at a later time I will distribute it to the council. And it was just a reminder that NSFM has a number of advocacy priorities, and the committees really want to hear from councils what they should be studying and issues they should be moving forward at the provincial level.
Maybe with that process, you could outline what are identified as advocacy topics. That might be helpful as well. Okay, we will move then to our in-camera session, and we will take just a quick 5-minute break. If we have a motion to move in camera, please. Moved by Councillor Moore and seconded by Deputy Mayor Vino to move in camera, and we will take a 5-minute break.
Do we have to give everybody's approval?
Yes, we do. Yes, please. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Oikel. Yep. put the motion on the floor, I would appreciate that.
14.2? It's on your package.
We're good? We're back in session, and we have a couple of motions to come forward. Would someone put the first motion? Councillor Oikel, thank you very much.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council approve the sale of PID 60435849, Lot 9, Blue Nose Avenue, Pleasantville, to Carl Clancy and Melissa Boss in the amount of $17,358.70 as per policy 036, divestiture of surplus land, and authorize the mayor and CAO to sign an agreement of sale and purchase and sale, and I so move.
And do we have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Moore. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, oh, sorry. No?
Is it normal to put the dollar price of the sale in the motion?
Typically, they get reported publicly, so there's no jeopardy in doing it.
All those in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second motion. Councillor Burns, thank you.
To Mayor McLean Weil and council, I move that municipal council approve the removal of the restrictive covenants from the title of the property located at 391 Harold Wynot Road, PID 60582-566, and direct staff to prepare and file a release on the title. And I so move.
And a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Oikel. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We have no further business on the agenda. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.